Preference. It could go either way. So how's everyone's day? How's the day going?
Good. Yeah, really good.
Give me some highlights.
I crossed a lot of things off my list. So that was nice. Just working on content phases, design phases. The design phases are really what's more exciting though. Let's be honest.
What design phase did you finish today?
I'm not quite finished yet, but I'm working on Bitworks.
Oh, Fitworks.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I thought you said Bitworks, and like, so much in my crypto world is like bit this, bit that, Bitworks, Bitblock, and I'm like, wait, are we getting those websites yet? That's too funny.
We're just putting it out there. Just putting
We
the feelers
are.
out. But yeah,
We are just putting it out.
Bitworks, you can be next.
You know, and there's a principal. Sammer is calling me right now.
Great.
Hang on, let me make sure it has nothing to do with the show. Hang on, I'm gonna text him real quick. But no, in crypto, there's this idea of, we call it BITO, B-I-T-O, which is build in the open, and like in that world, hang on, what's up on a live show? Hold on. Oh, he's sending me a link. Never mind. So the BITO principle is a philosophy of crypto, and its philosophy is how are you? Please call me. What in the world? Oh, when you're free. Okay. Yeah, I guess he doesn't realize we're on a show. But the BITO thing is building in the open. The principle is total transparency, or as much transparency as is reasonable. And so, like, I don't mind us even getting on the show and even having like a pseudo half afternoon huddle and pretend no one's watching. That's actually what makes the crypto show so good.
Yeah.
Is we really just talk through and people get to know our vibe.
Yeah.
And it's less like interviewee, less showy, and more just streaming. It's like streamers, really.
Yeah.
You know? So, but let's talk about this. So that graphic I shared with you girls, just as a topic, did you think about it anymore after we talked about it this morning, honestly?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to pull it up. Go ahead.
I feel like I kind of paralleled it with my experience, like, because what we do is Spark, sometimes it can feel like a corporate job, but it's so much better than that. So I always hesitate to lump it in with that, because it's not corporate. But we sit at our computers a lot. So
we do. We do.
But I just was thinking in terms of like when I worked for a large insurance company, and back then it was just a normal chain of command, but I just feel like it's not conducive to like really building anything. You're just kind of like just a number, really, which I'm sure is kind of the point in that case. But just the difference that I feel in the two situations, working for like a corporate company and working the way we work. Yeah, there it is.
There it is. But go ahead, keep it with that thought though. Like, were you just dwelling on, or did you have any thoughts?
No,
like, it's more like this.
I'm just so like happy that I'm not still stuck in that same kind of like old work paradigm. And it's just nice that like Jessica and I Jessica, you can speak for yourself, but for me, I feel like you always empower us to learn more and do more. And then that just reflects in what we do. So I don't know. I just think it's a different way of having like your little work community, but in a way that just like, it doesn't ever tire any one system out. Everybody is there to like help each other and do what you're best at doing. So
yeah. What are like some real, so I got to ask this. A lot of people have this story of this nightmare top-down oppressive leadership employer model.
Mm-hmm.
I have never had that experience. Like, and so I've spent a lot of time going, was it really that bad? Or are you just like feeding back the headlines that, like, seriously? But everyone seems to have like a real tough story. So maybe without giving specifics, have both of you, either of you, Jessica, yourself, have you had like really oppressive, top-down, grueling corporate jobs?
I mean, I have, and I really like this graphic of the new small business like leadership model, because it was just really I felt like the old model was really unhealthy. Um, I definitely felt below everyone else. And that like my opinions really were not valued. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, like dust in the wind, like, oh, well, like that doesn't, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I was taken seriously, but,
Well, I think it's the difference too. I mean, personally, I feel like it's a difference in working for a smaller business and working for a large corporation too.
Interesting.
I've only had the experience of working for a large corporation once, and it was that job. Any other like career jobs, anything that I've had has all been for small businesses. That's kind of what I look for. I think just because like my parents were small business owners, like I just gravitate towards that. And the flexibility that often comes with working with small businesses that you don't get with the corporate world. Like I really didn't like that. With my previous job, it was just like so numbers focused, but those numbers didn't mean anything to me because they weren't set by me. I wasn't, and it was all based around like sales too. So that was even more frustrating. It's just like, that's even more pressure. So yeah, I think it definitely exists. I think the paradigm of like this awful corporate thing, I think maybe we add to that as a society to some extent. But I think the overwhelming majority, like you said, everyone has a story like this.
They do. They really
some
do.
Kind. Yeah.
Like they personally, and sometimes I wonder, what is that phrase when someone else has experienced trauma and you legitimately experience trauma just based on the storytelling?
Yeah.
Like there's a word for it though.
Yes. Is it like trauma dumping? Or is that something different?
That's I
similar
think there's an
concept?
actual diagnosis for like it's like second borrowed trauma or secondary trauma, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And you go around and like years later you'll tell a story and someone will go, that didn't happen to you, that happened to Stacy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that did. And you like internalized it. And so that's what I wonder. Like I had this, and sexism in the workplace is one thing, but I'm actually more talking about structures of, these corporate structures that are super oppressive. But I mean, I guess I was reflecting on it and I was like, I actually think I've worked mostly for entrepreneurs, except for my short foray working for Starbucks.
That's what I was thinking for you too. I was like, well, you have Starbucks, but
I owned it. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so easy because of this structure. I can thrive in this structure because I'm like, wait, I just have to be charismatic, get sales, and like lessen my turnover, bro. Like, I killed it. I had a blast. I mean, it was really fun. But I don't think what do you think it is to like when people look at a corporate structure and they just like, I've never felt like at Starbucks. I never felt like an underling. What do you think that is?
So when I worked in sales, there were really only there were a couple different levels that you could be in sales, like depending on like how long you'd been there and stuff like that. But basically there were just sales associates and then like management. And management, like sales is on the phone all day. For 8 hours, that's what you do. And management just walks around and tells you like, hey, get your feet down, like get off your desk, like just any possible happiness that you get. They're just like, hey, knock that. Like they're just there to be like rule enforcers, basically. Like they're not on the phones. And then, they have to review your calls with you and stuff. That's how you learn. It's how you grow. And it's just like, they feed you all this like, oh, but you just have to discover the gaps, like what the client's not getting. And it's like, no. They just want cheaper insurance. Like, it's not that, but the way they would teach it, it was just like kind of condescending.
Almost like a veneer, almost like,
yeah. So it was frustrating. And then I actually went out for a management position and they invited me to interview for it. And it was an interview where like 20 different people on the floor were going to get interviewed for it. So I knew like there wasn't a big chance I was going to get it, but I was still excited that I was going out for it. And then I missed a day of work because one of my kids was sick, and that like knocked me out of the running. And they told me the day before the interview that I was
What?
not, and for weeks, I was like talking to other people higher up. I was prepping. I had all my stuff ready. I had like my interview outfit ready, all this stuff.
You were knocked out of the running because you had a mom day.
Yeah. Because in the corporate world, like they see absences as that's a big issue. And I have a lot of friends who still work in the corporate world who struggle with this. There's not a lot of room for, like, it's a very strict attendance policy. You have to be here 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
You know, to be in their queue. And so when you're not, then only so many of those are excused. And you don't get very many that are excused. And you don't get very much like PTO that you can use. You have to have that approved like within so long.
Really?
So it's just like, as a mom, I always found it really hard to work for them because, you know, my husband works for the fire department. If one of us is missing work, is it the insurance agent or the firefighter? It's probably going to be the insurance agent. Like, so I never could put my career first because I'm always the primary parent that gets called if somebody's sick or needs to be picked up. So it's just like, it works if you can fit into a certain box. But I think that especially if you have a family, I just think working in the corporate world is difficult.
Especially if you're a mother.
Correct. Yeah, it's different for fathers. Unfortunately, like we wish it wasn't, but it's different. So
you girls I think you would really dig this Jackie Roach gal that I came across. And she works a lot in blockchain, but she's got her own kind of like healing journey and it's really cool. And she shared a lot with me, but I'll save that for another day. But I asked her the other day, I was like, if you could work on any project, what would you work on? And she was thinking of supply chain with blockchain, but specifically for pregnant mothers. And I was like, what? And she said, do you know how difficult it is for a pregnant mother who is focusing on nutritional well-being? How many foods say not advised for pregnant women or something like this, or not safe
breastfeeding,
not safe for pregnant women or breastfeeding. And I this was a new, obviously, or maybe not obviously, this was just like, what? Like, how many things? I've seen it, but like, how many things? We're talking about salmonella. And they're like, no, like all of these ingredients become really difficult to source.
Yeah.
And she said, if we had an app that you either put a recipe in or a shopping list, and it would already know, because of the blockchain records everything and whether or not it's, organic or whatever it is. And it could tell you where to get those ingredients in your town so that you weren't henpecking everywhere for this thing. And I was like,
cool.
well, that's kind of, I mean, that's an interesting use case. And I was like, how big of a problem is this? She said, if there's ever a new human in the developed world, there's probably a mother who at some point in her journey asked this question. And you're like, I never thought about that. And so then I parallel that to this. If there's ever a woman of childbearing or of parenting age who is working in corporate, like most every family's bivocational, or dual income.
Right.
That mother is, or that potential mother is having this career question, and this gal, Miss Roach or Jackie Roach, she said, systems are not built around, the way she worded it is, I want to see systems built where the bar is a pregnant mother. And it's not just food sourcing, it's also business models.
Yeah.
And there's inherent flaws with this business model that come to mind. But do you think a company like your previous employer, who shall not be named, do you think a company like that could be as productive as they were if they built it around that bar?
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing.
Honestly.
At this company, you really have no say in anything. So how much is that really going to mean to you at the end of the day? Like, if you just want to punch a clock and you're not worried about the rest, then sure. But I think it would be harder just because of generally the sheer number of humans. And I think the corporate structure is what it is because of the amount of people in the system. So
Interesting.
I think it's
Well,
possible.
yeah, I just don't know, and that was what I was debating. So I
Yeah.
got some pushback on this from my little brother of all people on Instagram. I shared this on Instagram, and my little brother, he's an awesome being. He's super intelligent. He's got great technical skills and technical backgrounds. He's worked as a contractor for the government. He's just super smart, but he sometimes wears his introversion on his sleeve. He's a massive introvert.
Hmm.
And when he looked at this model, he said, "I like the idea of this, but this is prone to an extrovert." And so, like, when
Mm.
you see this model, or even what we talked a little bit about this on our huddle this morning, were you inclined to believe that this like lent itself or was better for extroverts versus intro? Did you have that? Did that a thought occur to either of you at all?
No, but now that you say that, it's a curious thought
How
for
so?
sure.
Like, does anything come to mind?
Well, I mean, the new model might be something that's harder for an introverted person. Um, if they have a hard time leading, because I think the new model does require each person or each supporter and leader, yeah, to kind of step up in a different way. And that
Interesting.
could be really overwhelming to someone who is more introverted. Um, and I know some people, like, I know a lot of people who are really introverted at work, but not introverted socially, and vice versa. So it's like, I guess I could see that being difficult, because in the old model, you
Interesting.
kind of just, it's sort of like taking orders, right? Like
It is, and
it's,
everyone complains about it. But I
but at
think
the
you're
end of the
right.
day,
There's a
it's an
safety.
easy, exactly. And that is the whole reason I personally went to a corporate job anyway, because I was looking for stability, and like, I don't want to lead. I just want to do a job and collect my paycheck. And I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. I couldn't do it. I hated it. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that is the thing. So when I looked at this model,
Hmm.
the first thought I had was this is not prone to a high growth company. Um, it like especially at this model, because this model comes from, I think, well, I mentioned on our huddle, but for the public, if someone is watching or if anyone watches this later, this model is based on spiral economies. And spiral economies, there's a great book. It's not on this bookshelf. I think it's on the other one over there, called Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher. And I think it was written in the 70s or 80s. And it was all about, why do we have this presumption that productivity measures, revenue measures, or heck, even GDP is the best way, gross domestic product. And if you think about that number, that's how much each American produces in their job. People don't think about it. But like when you measure GDP output, like the US generally has had like the largest GDP, but then no one stops to correlate that with, we also have a high amount of stress and suicides and shootings. I wonder if there's a correlation. And the Small is Beautiful says, it asks an esoteric question, which I do roll my eyes at, like, how much is enough? How much is enough? And what I liked about the spiral economy is it wasn't really posing an esoteric question. It was saying social capital. There's revenue capital, there's physical capital, but then there's social capital. And we very rarely talk about this, and we think about it like our network. Jessica and her serving job, maybe she sells websites there because of her social capital, her network, or me at my crypto conference, that's social capital. But there's like 6 other types of social capital that we very rarely account for. And there are things like flexibility for real life stuff, like being a parent.
Yeah.
And what is the dollar? Like, should we not put a dollar value on that and say that's part of your compensation package? If you can bail and go and not get like knocked for it, but that's the very thing you got knocked for in the last job,
Yeah.
shouldn't we put a dollar figure and call that part of a compensation package? And it's like, well, but what that forces is, I think, something my brother was getting at. We're faced with putting a dollar value on all these things we think we say we want in this world. Well, let's put a dollar figure and say, well, your revenue, the actual take-home pay, is lower because this is a very human ooey gooey thing, and not usually pretty leveraged. So if you're exchanging one thing for the other, you have to add a dollar value to it and say, no, that is part of my compensation package. I
Yeah.
have to. But similarly with introversion versus extroversion, you also have to own, no, there's more responsibility
Yeah.
because I'm getting a different type of reward.
Yeah.
Jessica, any thoughts from you? I know we're rambling, but like as you see these models, have you had any experiences? You did mention you might have had an oppressive job experience. Can you share that at all?
I mean, I feel like pretty much all of my jobs before this one have been unhealthy. But also I just felt like I got to a point where like I could no longer grow. There was nowhere else for me to go. And so then I would just kind of get stagnant, and I would just try to keep like proving myself and like, let me learn this and let me learn that. And I just wasn't able to get any farther. But also like having like unhealthy management, like, I don't know. But I really like this business model because I feel like it does like empower each person. Like it just seems like more of a healthy team structure, to let different people lead with their strengths and
Yeah.
in their department. Like I really do see these three as the three of us.
Well, and it's not limited to 3, obviously, but
I
yes,
know, but
It's hard not
representation
to.
of-
It's hard not to.
What'd you say, Amber?
No, it's just hard not to look at that and think of us because, I mean, it's always the three of us. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so the question though is and this is a framework that I am trying to shape. I've got an appointment with one of my really respected friends this Friday, and we're just going to hammer out like, what are some of these nuances of how these are connected? Can smart contracts really like compensate everyone? So like there's a technical question, but then there's also an emotional one. About about these structures and what's good or bad. So like as you think about that, what are some of the inherent flaws? Like Jessica, the one thought I had was you said in your job you were limited in your growth. And in this model, I think the trouble is there's almost constant growth.
Yeah. I
Does that
think that would be
tiring?
the trouble. Yeah.
Does that ever get tiring in our
You
world?
said the constant growth would be an issue.
I'm wondering, I'm asking if it would be.
I don't think so because we're all working towards the common cause. I don't know. I think that it would be exciting to be able to continue growing.
Well, and boots on the ground though, like every day working, say for example, in the microcosm of Spark sites.
Yeah.
Every day we have a huddle, and that inevitably that huddle is always like, I have no idea about this one thing.
Yeah.
Does that ever get tiring?
Yes. All the time. Like total transparency. Like it's,
Yeah.
I think it is overwhelming, but like amazing. So it just changes, I guess. It's great, it's awesome, but it is a lot. And I think about my journey from when COVID hit and I started to learn how to write code from where I'm at now in my career. And I'm just like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
But I'm fulfilled in a way that I never have been previously. So I'm tired. Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work. But when I look at it from like the long view, I'm very grateful for it. Like it's hard not to be. But yeah, the like that is kind of monotonous almost. It's like, oh my gosh, what new thing today? Like that's what being in content support is. So it's constant adaptation to like new information. And that, I think that can be really difficult. It's like being in college forever, like, just saying.
Yeah.
But it's really rewarding because Jessica's right. You get to grow, you get to learn. And then it's like, you get to be proud of yourself for things you never would have even thought before that would be something, Jessica's a master marketing gal now, like 6 months ago.
Is that true, Jessica? Are you a master marketing girl?
I'm kind of modest on that, but thank you, Amber.
I mean, but like 6 months ago, you couldn't have said you are where you are today. So it's,
Right.
I mean, I think that in it's hard to get through some of like the day to day with stuff like that, but ultimately, I still think this is a better model.
Yeah. Well, I think it is, and I don't know if it is by leaps and bounds. Um, Especially like it will flush out what someone's real values are.
Mm-hmm.
When someone says, "I'm sick of this model, I want this model," and you give them that model, and they realize, "Oh, well, no, no, wait, hold on. I wanted all the good things from this model plus more better things." And it's like, "Well, no, this old model exists for a real freaking reason. Everyone has their hand out and says, I want a certain amount of benefits." And you get these oppressive structures, which I put in air quotes for those who might be listening to this later, because in the end, whether it's an A type being an a-hole, or whether it's a super kind, empathetic leader who still says, I still need this output, there has to be a certain margin to give everyone the benefits they have in large companies.
Yeah.
Like the margin, I don't think people can, it's like, can we actually fathom $1 billion? You ever look at those infographics on Instagram and like, what's actually $1 billion? And it's like, I don't think any of us could get our head around it. I think very few people can actually get their head around how high margin a company has to be to do like benefits, true benefits.
Yeah.
Just as to take one example. And so when you exchange this model and you go, well, wait a minute, the sacrifice for this model is unexpected. So what are some of the challenges? And this model doesn't necessarily represent your experience with Spark Sites, because I don't think we've lived this entirely. I think we're ambitious for it. But what are some of the, aside from maybe things like less benefits, things like more responsibility, are there any other challenges to this particular model? Introversion, extroversion, unprepared to take on a role of leader in a pinch. Like, what are some gaps that you see as we look at it?
That's a great question.
Nothing. It's flawless.
It's perfect.
I mean, I'm ready to work that plan. I like it.
What do you mean?
I mean, not saying that, I don't know. This is just how it feels working with the two of you with Spark. Like, I just feel like, with the direction that we're wanting to go, I feel like we all have our roles and what we need to do to achieve our next goal order. So I can't help but look at this and just think about us and our mission.
How would you articulate? Well, and this is a great thing because a cause is supposed to arise from everybody. And I know the language igniting lives has come from me. I know that we've talked a lot about being an education company and a training company, but do you feel it's actually a shared ethos, honestly?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, I feel like I'm educating and encouraging our clients all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing that we do, and it's also the thing that feels the best. No matter
Yes.
what else happens with the work or the new edits or any of that,
Yeah.
that's the thing that matters. And I think when things get hard or overwhelming, for me personally, I just think about like what a difference we make in people's lives all the time. Like just making their life, running their business easier, just a smidgen. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could just be, hey, can you update that package for me today? I'm trying to get this marketing post out. I had a client call me yesterday. She was trying to get a post out, but she messed up something on one of her products, and so she just needed somebody to like quickly talk her through it. And it's like she was like so happy afterwards. So
So I have this visceral experience. I'm going to tell on one of our clients, and I know her well enough to know that she'll take this well. Renee, for those who don't know, Coach Renee Lopez is the number one college recruitment trainer, author, and speaker there is. Like there's others, but like she dominates.
Yeah.
And we were lucky to be with her before that, and we've been together for a long time. Now, without giving away what she does financially, just suffice to say she sells a lot of books. And so she's super highlighted in my world. If like we were selling that many courses and books, like we would pay people to do stuff, but sure enough, she's in here calling me, going, I can't figure out this shipping plugin on her website. And like, I think I've spent now like an hour and 15 minutes with her today alone, just like, I don't get it. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, you need to hire a part-timer. What are we doing? And I need to. Like, what am I doing taking this call? Like, what am I doing? And in the midst of this, we had a laugh. She and I had a laugh. We shared a laugh about some small, silly nuance where it literally, she walked through the steps. She told me what she did. She selected everything, and it didn't work. And so I said, well, you tell me what you did. And I just did what she did. It worked for me. And you guys know these experiences people have. And I'm just like the technology whisperer, I guess. And so we shared a laugh about that. And in the middle of that laugh, I thought, I really could be working on this course. Mm-hmm. I really could be working on our target goal for selling how many products we're going to sell this quarter.
Yeah.
I could be working on the IRL event, but I actually think this is really core. Am I a trainer or am I not?
Yeah. And that's kind of how I felt yesterday. And it was a newer website client too. So, I just wanted to make sure she was taken care of and that she wasn't stressing. And she was like, I have other stuff, but it's not an emergency. Like, we just need to handle this. And I'm like, they just need to be put at ease sometimes by somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Without giving away the client this morning.
Yeah.
Did you guys observe, said another way, a different client, they could have come in hot and heavy. Mm-hmm. But the merit of the client, and the merit of the client himself, he's just an exemplary client, period. That helps. But he also was willing to roll with us when we came in educatively, consultatively. Mm-hmm. Hey, what are some of the feature sets you think you wanted that aren't present here?
Yeah.
And then we took time to educate and train on the thing. And like that changed the whole tone. I don't know. Did you feel that? I felt that it changed the whole tone of the conversation.
Yeah, it did.
And so that education component is huge. So I don't know. And that actually probably has very little to do with this model.
Right.
But it is an effect. How did we even get on training versus this model? I don't
we were talking about if the cause is really something.
That's true.
If we really share that.
Yeah. Well,
really.
No, and you said like I actually enjoy that the most.
Yeah, and I don't slow down enough to enjoy those moments because of the side of things that I'm on. Since I'm heavily in production, I don't get as many of those touch points. But there's often so many times where it's most valuable for me to be the touch point. And in this case, I was actually glad because the client emailed me and I was actually reading through her email and then she texted me and she was like, only 2 of those things are an emergency. And if you could just make time for me. And she was great, just asking for help. But I was like, I'm actually really glad I'm the one that this went to because I can just jump on a call with her in an hour, answer her question, and I can help her fix it over the phone because I already know what she did. Because she already sent me the list of edits or list of things she needed help with. So,
well, and what you're explaining is, I think we have this luxury in small business to connect more deeply with someone else's cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this might, like when people see this model, they might think, well, no, my other roles, my mom's groups, my gardening groups, like other things that I'm a part of, but also our clients are a part of this.
Well, I just think about Jessica, how excited she got when she was doing the showcase for Advent home care.
Maxine.
Oh my gosh, all this cool stuff she does for the community. It's like, you really do get a chance to be a part of something outside of what we do is great, amazing, love it. We already know that, but getting to step into someone else's world for a second and just be submerged in that, I think it's just cool.
Yeah, and that's what this small model does. I think, like, to get more leverage, for example, we should probably be doing less services. Mm-hmm. It's tough to make this model work for services. It's tough to make any company with services work not at scale with division of labor.
Yeah.
That's very difficult. And so as we talk about evolving ourselves into a training company, and for those watching, we got a few viewers right now. I mean, not a lot of our clients know that we're proactively now, not just in word, but also in deed, trying to make that shift. It's almost like in this small model, you have to have a high level of consultative or educational or yeah, I guess I would say that consultative or educational
Yeah.
services or products to really leverage it to stay viable. But
Hmm.
like I think about our relationship with Avanza, tomorrow's meeting with Avanza, I got to book that room. I think about that relationship where we're doing the fractional CMO work, we're doing a little bit of service, but really I was thinking like, oh, I kind of regret that I called it fractional CMO. This morning I was thinking about this. I was like, we should have just called it a training agreement.
Yeah. And it's like, it's the number one thing people are going to ask us for once they're a client
Yes.
is, how do I market this? How do I continue to grow? And I think you just hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this model actually puts it, my little brother was expressing there's a different type of pressure this
Mm-hmm.
model puts on. For him, it was representative of like introversion and extroversion. And for us, I see the pressure here is that if you're not careful, it can cap revenues.
Mm.
And you have to be intentional about how. Now, a lot of people see this and they might think boutique. And boutique simply means I charge way more for the
Yeah.
same thing. And even if we like we've taken on work where we got paid tons,
Yeah.
we still hated on the super high end. You girls
Yeah.
weren't here for the $12,000 project, a 6-page website, $12,000, but you have heard me talk about it, but the public might not have. We built a 6-page website for 12 grand. It was a miserable process
Mm-hmm.
because the client felt that they were paying so much, and we tried to frame it as much as possible on the front end. But when the rubber met the road, they needed a dog and pony show for every element because they're effectively paying 2 grand a page.
Right. That's what I thought. As soon as you said that, I was just like, whew.
And it really was a dog and pony show
Yeah.
because
It
in
had to
our,
be.
yeah, if I were an engineer, the old adage, like, I charge $110, $10 for the hammer and $100 to know where to hit. You've heard this metaphor, this
Mm-hmm.
allegory or whatever it is. And it's like, I wish we could do that, but for some reason in design services and website services, it's like, why does it cost this much? My niece in college could do it, and it's like, well, no, I've looked, she really can't, but everyone still feels like it can be done. And so there's a dog and pony show. Let's pull out mimosas. Let's talk through the design. But the truth is I could have done this without talking to you. And
Mm-hmm.
we would have gotten the same net effect. And no, they want that luxury experience. So I say that to say when people see this model and they think boutique, to me, I hear that they're not experienced.
Yeah.
They haven't had those experiences because it can be quite distasteful. And I like our idea of this training and education model because it's very not blue collar, but kinda relatable.
It is. Yeah. I think that we have to know how to explain things in a way that almost anyone could understand them. So,
Yeah.
when you're handing over a complex project, it might not always go so well,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah. Now, what about this one element? And we haven't talked much about it, but I'd like your feedback. Leadership is a fluid role. Is that like my brother this was the major thing that caused him some palpitations. Like, I'm an introvert. Leaders are always extroverted in his kind of presentation. And if I pushed him, he'd probably say, no, there's nuance to my response. But that was kind of what triggered him. When you see that, do you believe leadership can actually be fluid? Truly?
yeah, I do actually believe
Do
that.
you?
I I hate to keep like paralleling everything to us. But I think that we as leaders, it changes just depending on what we're talking about. Like, if one of us is stuck in the huddle, whoever is the most well-versed on it is the one that's going to answer it. Doesn't necessarily mean Jessica's asking you or I'm asking you. I could be asking Jessica, or Jessica could be asking me, or, whatever. So I think that, yeah, I do think leadership really, I think to really keep things in the right baskets where they should be, I think it's important that leadership be fluid, because I don't think everybody is always equipped to handle every situation as well as somebody else could have anyway. So I think it's just sharing some of that responsibility. And that also is part of what helps you grow.
Yeah.
Is sharing in those moments. Like, I know my husband always laughs at me when I'm building websites now, because he says that I do it so fast. But back in the day, like when I was building my first website, I would be like, I don't know if it's done. Like, how do I know if there's enough stuff?
Jessica can relate. I see her head bobbing.
Yes. Like, how do I know? Because I don't think I'd ever had that like conversation with Marissa or with Grant before. And so it's just like, I know I have to give them a homepage and an internal page. I get that. But like, how do I know it's done? And like, part of leadership is like having the permission to take action without needing Grant's approval. So that was part of the thing that was hard for me, was like, can I send off a design phase without your approval? Like, you don't have to see this first?
Whoa, we gotta pause and capture something here.
What?
What, Jessica?
I'm just relating to on a lot of different levels what we're talking about.
Leadership. You said leadership is taking action without needing Grant's approval. But extrapolate it another way. Leadership is taking action without needing approval.
Yes. And that's a really hard thing. Like, there are still times where I know I'm asking for Grant's approval and he's probably annoyed at me for it. But like, I just don't have that. I'm like, I don't know. Something's holding me back here from like making that next step. But overall, like, that was one thing that was really hard for me, was like, are you sure you don't want to, like, what if this sucks? And I'm sending this at you. You're like, no, you know what you need to know. So I think that it's really
interesting. Facebook user, for some reason, your name did not come through. I would love your name on this. And it's apparently someone with a military background, I think. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, the military definition of leadership is taking initiative in the absence of orders. I would love to give you a shout out for this, Facebook user. So please drop your name there. I apologize for it not coming through otherwise. But I like, it sounds almost something like Tim Madden would say, who's been a client of ours, but he continues to move up in his rank, and he's done a lot of leadership school in the military. But this could easily be Clark as well. But you know what this points out, Amber, based on you and apparently the military's definition, is the old model always seeks. Oh, Sean Lyons. Okay, Sean. And Sean, I don't recall, did you have military background? And it sounds like you did, and I didn't know that about you. Thanks for popping in and sharing.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's huge. Did we get his question answered, by the way? He emailed us a question. Did we get him answered? Didn't he ask us a question about something in an email?
I reached out to him because he said that he would have questions.
I think he emailed it to me. Yes, sir. Okay. Got it. He's got him. Yeah, and he says yes, sir. So there's that military background. But this model right here, this is nearly every hierarchy model. And it's like that way for a reason, maybe an accountability reason. But and the military has the structure too. But it's weird to think that the military can reconcile leadership is taking initiative. What do we say? Taking initiative in the absence of orders. But maybe when there are orders, it's taking those on. But the idea is that it doesn't get abused. Is it your sense that leadership gets abused more in business than in the military, you think? I mean, do either of you I don't have military experience. Do either of you have military experience? Maybe it's an unfair question.
No, I don't.
Probably
have
an
any.
unfair question.
Probably.
Our sense is that it probably is, and I'm willing to bet if the military does have that clear of a definition, they have to have struck a balance with hierarchy
Yeah.
and leadership, but yet still in the private sector, if leadership isn't a set of orders in this new model, and leadership is taking action without permission, so to speak, Amber, I love your definition. What is the guide stone for when you're taking action but don't know what to do in a small
Ooh.
business?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
Sean says taking appropriate action is the actual definition. I typed too fast. Taking appropriate action in the absence of orders. So not just taking a wrong action, shoot them all.
Do the right thing.
but taking the right action.
Mm-hmm.
That is so. What is hidden in that sentence? Like, what is the implications? How do you know to take an appropriate action?
If somebody's like down and out, if you're in the trenches and, you're sick, like there have been times where one of us is sick and the other one has to pick up the slack, it's just.
How do the others know how to pick up the slack? What is the support structure? What do you think, Jessica? You're thinking hard.
I'm so thinking hard. I don't know. I just feel like I would put myself in if I had to take over production, which God help me, he would be on my side if I had to jump into her shoes. But I just feel like I would just do, just what would Amber do? And I would probably just use my resources, go back to like prior emails or prior situations where something, was handled in a similar way. And just,
she took her troubleshooting steps.
I think to get better about that.
Yes.
So I think what we're getting at is something that the military does do well. Training.
Protocols.
Right.
So what is the support when someone slips in and says, okay, I'm going to be a leader. Okay, what do I do? Where's the manual? And, the manuals within small business or business in general have changed a lot. But like, I know that Jessica has her troubleshooting steps on the wall just to her right.
Yeah.
I think it's her right. It is. Okay. Yeah. Right there. But like in our software, we have checklists.
Yeah.
And knowing the protocol. Like for those who don't know, we have one that we haven't used often lately, actually, but we call swarm protocol. And it's when we stop sales, we stop extraneous activities, and those who are able, we swarm the inbox or we swarm the content support, we call it, their tasks, and we just focus on that until it's eased up. Like we have a protocol for that. Mm-hmm. And so I think in order to effect this model, there's an additional pressure. And that is, since there's a higher amount of responsibility on fewer people, not necessarily workload, but responsibility. Mm-hmm. That means there's a higher responsibility for training, for support, for clear protocols. I think that's a really good cause. So in that situation, then, Amber, leadership, the absence of orders or the absence of permission isn't like, oops, there's no one there, but it's, wait, I'm the boss now.
I know what to do.
Or I'm the boss now, I might not know what to do, but I am responsible to figure out and deliver to others what to do.
Yes.
And, that goes back to the Navy SEAL example I gave you girls. I've given you girls. Oh, yeah, we just talked about this morning. The, Navy SEAL teams will train on this hierarchy of orders. But when they get into action zones, it does really look more like this based on, are we doing extraction? Well, who's the most trained in extraction? Are we doing translation with a local? Who's the most trained? And that person becomes the leader, and they then give orders in real time. And then they know when to switch back to a hierarchical model,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the situation. Often when it's back in base or the mission itself is concluded or whatever's going on, it's more of a special ops sort of structure, which means, I think I heard it said once, and this number's dated. Oh, I like this. Oh, train until it becomes a reflex. You know the job of everyone above and below is the ideal. If you're learning the level above you, you're always working to better your own opportunities and directly affecting the outcome in a positive manner. Train until it becomes a reflex. Now, in what areas could we train more so that it becomes a reflex? Just pragmatically.
Where could we train more where it would be a reflex?
A
Google Search Console.
Yeah.
Yep,
What
Google
I can
search.
think of for
Yeah,
myself. I need some
yeah.
training there.
That's just for us. What about you, Jessica? You were brewing for some.
No, I think that I could also benefit from that type of training because I am the one who gets the messages in the inbox. So if I could know how to troubleshoot those and not have to put them in front of either of you, I think that would save everyone time.
Interesting.
I'm always trying to figure out how I can do things and take them off your plates.
Yeah. I like that. Extreme Ownership. We should read that book. That's by that Navy SEAL guy. Extreme Ownership. It might be a little too machismo for our vibe, but it might have good nuggies.
Yeah.
For sure. So we're on this train because I asked the question, what's the guidestone when you don't know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the support structure? Well, per Sean Lyons, in common sense, training is the number one support.
Yeah.
And practice is like in there. But what about when we encounter something that we didn't think about training on? I mean, the latest being kind of these ranking issues with Google Search Console, or indexing issues, not ranking issues. And we just came up with a protocol for that this morning. That's fantastic. But like when none of that is in place and we don't know what to do, what's at the center of our purpose?
Our cause.
And the cause derives our values. What are our three main core values?
Educate, encourage, and empower.
And I think that those are not alive enough in most businesses, most small.
Yeah.
Why do we exist? And then what are our business values? Because when I'm not sure what to do, I might now make the wrong decision. But if I make the wrong decisions for the right values, I'm at least not going to get in trouble internally. We might have to fix something. But I educated the client, I encouraged the client, I empowered the client, but I also empowered the situation, meaning, I don't know if you guys caught this word track, but when we got on that call this morning, when it's like, oh man, this implementation was not what this particular person in the client's office was said to expect.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said is we could totally do this, but let me ask you a few questions. And hold on, let me make sure I'm not getting. Oh, there we go. So I affirmed and empowered and said, okay, let's empower the situation. Totally be done. Okay, that's literally all the client generally wants to hear on the empowerment end. But let me ask you a few questions, and I'm not really sure what to do in that situation. Like this morning, I wasn't really sure, so we have to go into discovery. So I think this is important that the cause arise from the spirit of the community. But taken one step further, and we don't have a lot of time left, posing a question here. My little brother noted that the introversion and extroversion was nuanced from this regard. If this is the model of small business, introverts are handicapped because introverts inherently don't build communities, was what he purported. Now, this might be truly his experience as an introvert. Do either of you actually consider yourselves an introvert?
Mm-mm.
You really don't?
Mm-mm.
Jessica?
No, just grumpy. I'm just grumpy.
I'm just misanthropic. I'm not.
I just want to go back to my bed. I'm a troll.
Yeah. Jessica, do you consider yourself an introvert in circumstances?
I feel like I only feel introverted in situations that are unfamiliar to me. Like whenever I
I can
start
understand that.
whenever I start something new. And I think that stems back to like me being a child. Like I moved schools a lot. My parents got divorced when I was young. So I was always like the new kid, like every
Yeah.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I would just always like sit by myself at lunch for like a month. And I would just be watching everyone and trying to figure out like who I could be around.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So there's probably some things I need to clear up there emotionally, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like when I enter, and you guys see this with me, like whenever it's like, oh, we're gonna train you on something new, and I'm just like, can you just like walk me through it? But I'm trying to get better at that and just train myself and try to find the answers on my own. So yeah, but I mean, outside of that, I feel like everyone that knows me would say that I'm not an introvert.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, it needs to be considered because like for a business, and I call it a cause in this case, like we get together and say, you know what, I got some values I want to knock out. Me too. What are our skills? We look at our skills and go, why don't we start a business? And it's like, well, in theory, the hypothesis is that if we put these skills together, that this cause can manifest in a way. And whether that's the benefits of working from home or remotely, whatever it is, or maybe it's just abundant. We want it like some philanthropic thing, that cause guides. And for that cause to be strong enough so that when we encounter something we don't know what to do, and we go, okay, I'm the one responsible for this. I'm going to handle this. I'm not sure what to do. For the cause to lead to corporate values or business values that are so viscerally strong enough that we feel we have an internal compass, that is pretty heavy. I don't know if many people are introspective and present enough, but I feel like they're implying it's what they want when they bitch about this model. So forming that as a question, do you feel that most people have a strong enough community that out of the conversations and the relationships, they're strong enough to go, hey, if we threw in together, we could do something and this cause arises? Do you have friendships like that?
Yes. We just never take action. Like my friends have been talking about starting a commune for years. Like,
sure,
let's just all live together and just be weird. Like,
yeah,
let's do that.
Yeah.
And then none of us take action because we're like, well, life,
Yep. Oh,
But-
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Vicky Schwartz. Vicky is a pure joy to follow on Twitter. This gal has got her hands into everything, technological and AI. I don't even know how she finds the time. Honestly, Vicky, I don't know how you find the freaking time. But Vicky says exactly, she's just hyping you girls up a little bit. We're going through a time in history that I call moving up a level. Some things are going to condense or coalesce, and some will splinter. And I do agree with that. And if you notice something about this model, or any model like this, it's kind of like a terrorist cell network. And when a society begins to fragment, and I think the three of us share some observations about our society, like whether it's homeschooling or whether there's some things that are not, it's not a society on the upswing, right? Like it's a society that's being challenged. But this fractal nature is a splintered nature, but to me, it's trying to create a resilient micro community as a larger society begins to fragment a little bit.
Yeah.
So Vicky, I think that's a good observation. Vicky says,
Yeah.
I think we're all going through a wake up, and now she's just hyping you.
I think people just want to be, especially since COVID, people want to be doing what they want to do. I think a lot of people realized that they could work from home after COVID when they never thought that was possible before. So I think it's like everyone's looking for their little pocket, their little safe haven. And then those kind of all over time, like, will make the bigger picture better.
Yeah.
But like, it's just a place for everyone almost. And there's something you have to appreciate that sort of thing.
Well, and honestly, you girls don't get exposed to this nearly to the degree that I do, but the crypto community actually lives this model. And in part because the crypto model is decentralized and it's their living ethos. They're already living in a decentralized model. So they'll go into Discord pods and they'll be in 100 different Discords. And Jarrett said it really well this morning. He said, I think everyone's just looking for a life raft. And in today's world with all of these microeconomies, you can have multiple life rafts. Vicky says we're all looking for ways around participating so fully, and the choice is there. Now, I didn't want to miss this. Miguel's lovely husband, or I'm sorry, Jessica's lovely husband, Miguel, said aligning decisions and actions with core values promotes success. I totally agree. And last comment before we sign off, Vicky says, yes, what they really realized is that money, paper, or digital isn't worth the time they were spending trying to get some. And this is Vicky. I mentioned this earlier. I don't think you were on, but the book Small is Beautiful, I think would round out your world if you haven't already read it because you are a voracious consumer of information. I do recommend, I think her Twitter handle is @Drapeta, DRAPETA, I think. But definitely go find and follow Vicky, or just find me on Twitter and I'll connect you with her. Girls, I think it's time. This has actually been lovely. We got no questions. But we got a lot of good feedback from clients, and I think we actually worked out our thoughts a little bit. Give us one nuggie that you'll take away and sit on. Vicky, the name of the book is Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher. Yeah, check that out. Let me know if you can't find it, and I'll get you a copy or find that for you. Girls, before we sign off, what's the main nuggie you might sit on from this conversation? Jessica, you first.
I don't have a nuggie. I'm sorry.
What'd you say?
I don't have a nuggie. I'm just...
Oh, it's overwhelming? Okay.
He's happy to be here.
Introvert.
Introvert. You put me on the spot.
I shifted gears into introversion. Amber, you go first. We'll give Jessica a second to think.
I think what I really take away from this is just like uniting under one cause is just, you can't go wrong with that in mind. Like, I think back to any time over the last 3 years that I've gotten stuck on something and I'm like, I don't know what this means. I can't define these terms, Grant. What do I do? And ultimately Grant would look at me and be like, what is the goal? Like, what is their goal? And really, like, that's what we should be thinking for everybody. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the main thing that I'm going to take away from that. And
then I'll go again, Jessica, so you have even more time to think. My big one is that is intriguing me most about this is the risk. I have been in so many leadership positions. In fact, I only know leadership positions. And I think I started out, especially when I was doing a lot of, not-for-profit work or ministry, I think I started with this model where I'm like, let's do this. And I thought everyone was bought into the cause, but I couldn't see through my own charismatic leadership that really, even though I felt this way, it was actually this in other people's minds. And I was shocked and caught off guard by that. Marissa just told me about a book this morning, Billionaire Wilderness. And this journalist was basically going out to the Wyoming wilderness because it's one of the richest counties in the world and of billionaires. And he's like, I don't get this. Why are billionaires going out here? Why aren't they in New York or LA? And there's a lot of reasons, but in the interviews, they asked the billionaires, and the billionaires, well, I'm just like the average folk out here. They're billionaires. I'm just like the average folk out here, and they wear Wrangler jeans, and they wear a cowboy hat, and they go down to the local cafe, and they're like, yeah, I've got normal friends, like the owner of the cafe here, and the owner of the gas station. We're all buddies, man. We hang out. They went and interviewed those people. And where the billionaire thought this was going on, the owner of the cafe was like, oh my God, we're so stressed out when they show up. Everything's got to be right. And even the billionaire didn't fully realize it, but the billionaire owned the cafe. And the employees saw the billionaire not as a friendly local participant in their cafe. They saw him as the boss. Yeah. Walking in. And so I think a lot of people who have served in roles of leadership like myself think it's this, and it's actually this. And so my biggest takeaway is how sensitive, like a flower, cause actually is. And you actually have to sit back and say, do we really believe this? If not, then let's just own the fact we're the other thing. Yeah. So that's my big takeaway. And with that amount of time, Jessica, anything at all? No pressure.
I just think that this model is more empowering to each person. I just feel like we're more connected to the cause.
All
I
right.
just feel like the other model, you feel like a lesser part.
Yeah.
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 You
That's
don't,
true.
yeah.
That's
Like
true.
you can't be as influential in the cause. It's just like, yeah, like you hear it in the background, but it just
Yeah.
seems like
It's
it's
harder to really
harder to
take
be,
ownership.
yeah, it's harder to kind of take ownership. And I feel with the new model, you feel more for, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you almost like want to be accountable because
Mm.
um, the cause is like the center, and everyone is working towards the same goal.
And in theory, you or all participants, apparently in this model, you were the ones to say this is what we're here for. And that does create a sense of like responsibility, accountability, like extreme ownership. We're like, you know what? I did float this idea and they said yes to it. So I guess I'm on the hook to deliver, to a degree. Or things can always change. And that's the other thing. It's tender. Like I
Yeah.
mentioned, it really is like we do have to check in on the cause, why we're together, as frequently as possible. So thanks, girls. All right, everybody. That's it for the Spark office hours. Now, we didn't mean to talk this whole time. We just let you peek in, but like, you're welcome to ask questions. That's really, we're here to ask us anything, and just as the Spark team to be available. You guys might know us largely as Spark Sites. Of course, ask your website questions. We're evolving to a training company. We're not getting rid of our Spark website services, but we want to own the fact that we want to participate in elevating the small business community. So we are taking that on. So feel free to ask those questions as well about your small business. Thank you to Vicky. Thank you for Sean. And I think those were the comments. Thank you for Miguel for showing up and giving us your questions or your inputs. We really appreciate it. It keeps us alive. If you guys ever want to find our services, visit us at sparkmysite.com. Or if you want to learn more about the training services coming, keep an eye at stateofthespark.com because that's coming. And if you're already a client, know that we have an in real life event, an IRL event at the end of the quarter that's coming. So thank you. Whoop, 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 whoop. At least we're going to be there. We're going to have a good time. So thanks so much, everyone. Have